You don't look like my son. Dad said it like he was ordering coffee, not detonating a family. Chapel lights humming, lilies choking the air, Granddad cooling 10 feet away in a box that cost more than my first car. You ever notice how liars always blink twice? He did. Blink, blink. Then he smiled without teeth, the way salesmen do, and tugged at his tie like it was strangling him. Excuse me. I heard my voice and didn't recognize it. Too steady. In my head, an alarm. This is where you should walk. Before anyone touches the money, he said, leaning toward the mahogany where the will sat under a thick elastic. We need a DNA test. The room recalibrated. Chair scraped. Cousin Mara sucked her gum so loud it clicked. The lawyer, Brennan, with the silver hair and funeral parlor cologne, lifted an eyebrow like a guillotine blade. A test. I said, now? Dad's eyes slid to the casket and back to me, like Granddad might pop up with a referee whistle. He left a lot. Too much for mistakes. I'm not paying a liar to live. Blink, blink. Liar. He'd used that word on me since age 9. When I said I didn't break the window, when I said I didn't take his flask, when I said I didn't hear Mom crying. Liar was less a label and more a leash. I'm 33, I said. You've seen my face every day for 3 decades. And every day it looked a little less like mine. There it was. The gut punch. But you know what stung more? People nodding. Heads tilting as if trying new angles on a painting. My jaw has mother's. My eyes nobody's. If perception is a funhouse mirror, grief adds the extra bend. Brennan cleared his throat. May I remind you, Mr. Calkins, this is a funeral. The reading happens after a swab, Dad said. He turned to the crowd like he'd rehearsed. He's not my son. My molars found each other. You're saying, Mom. Don't put your mother in your mouth, he snapped. And then, quieter, to me, not today. Not today. Today was the only day anything ever happened in this family. Birthdays turned into bills, Christmas into critiques, Saturday into a checklist of ways I disappointed him. Today had a body in it, and still he found room for me. Mara leaned in like a mic had been dropped. Do we, have swabs here? She asked no one. Gum ticking time. Brennan steepled his fingers. We can arrange testing at the office. Dad pointed, jabbing the air between us. No tricks. Not with your toothbrush. I'm not getting surprised by some lab, rat you Venmo $50. Do I look like a guy with Venmo? I said, and got a laugh from 3 people who would not be invited to Thanksgiving ever again. Here's the thing I didn't say. 2 weeks before he died, Granddad called me to the porch. August heat, cicadas doing their chainsaw chorus. He held out a popsicle like it was a white flag. Humor an old man, he said, and dabbed the wooden stick at my cheek like he was anointing me. I didn't know then what game we were playing. I just knew his hands shook and I let him. When he wiped the stick on a napkin and slid it into an envelope, I pretended not to see. You ever go along with a magic trick you already understand? That was me. Let's proceed. Brennan tried again. But Dad had momentum and alcohol and the particular physics of a man who believes the room exists to reflect him. He stepped closer. I caught the bourbon on his breath, the stale coffee scaffolded under it. Look at him, he told the room. Look at his hair. Look at that nose. Mine's straight. His hooks. My son would have a straight nose. Your son, I said, has a straight mouth that curves when he lies. This is where the audience groans. You want me noble? You want me above the jab? Sorry. My halo's at the pawn shop with my wedding ring. Brennan lifted the elastic from the will. Thick stack. Cream paper. Old man sting. Your father's wishes. We'll be honored, Dad cut in. After a test. Fine. I said too quickly. I wanted the word to be a slap. Let's do it. Swab away. I have cheeks. Mara, delighted. He has cheeks. Aunt Lila, who'd been a statue until now, stood. Pearls like little thumbs at her throat. I will not watch this. Not here. In front of my brother. Dad didn't even look at her. Sit down, Lila. She sat. Of course she did. In our family, the person with the loudest shame got to be king. Brennan tapped the folder. There is something relevant. He weighed the room. He had that lawyer look like he'd seen worse in a church basement. Your father left an addendum. My heartbeat did a little jump cut. Granddad, you old fox. What did you do? Dad reached for the paper like a dog for steak. Brennan pulled it back just enough to remind him who had opposable thumbs. It's sealed, Brennan said. He instructed me to open it only if this exact issue arose. His words. The issue being? I asked, though I knew. The popsicle. The envelope. Dad folded his arms. Open it. You know that electricity just before a summer storm? The room got that. The air thickened. Even the lilies held their stink a second longer, waiting. Brennan broke the seal. Paper hissed like a secret escaping. He read silently first. Always the prep taste for poison. Then looked up at me. Then at Dad. Mr. Calkins, he said, meaning me. Your grandfather anticipated there might be conflict over inheritance tied to lineage. He chose every word like stepping stones on a swamp. He arranged testing prior to his passing. Dad's laugh was too loud, brittle as spun sugar. Against chain of custody. Invalid. He probably swabbed a dog. Brennan lifted a second sheet. Notarized. Stamps like bruises. Chain of custody is recorded. What does it say? I asked, though my cheeks were already burning like they knew. Brennan read, voice even. Results indicate a direct paternal line match between the decedent and, he glanced at me, the grandson known as Thomas Calkins. Tom. Me. The room shifted, a small collective inhale. Even the hum of the lights sounded like, oh. Dad blinked twice. Then 3 times. No. No, no. He found anger like a coat on a hook. You can fake anything. The internet. There's more, Brennan said. He hesitated. Paper trembled just enough for me to love him. Your father also requested that, should this come up, the following document be unsealed. He lifted a 3rd page. Older. The paper had that yellowed softness of something that knows secrets are heavy things. What is it? Lila whispered, the first time her voice wasn't a pearl. Brennan swallowed. A paternity report. Dated August 1989. The air snapped thin. I swear the lilies bowed. For whom? I said, though the answer had already stood up inside me and raised its hand. Brennan's eyes flicked to Dad. For Robert Calkins. My father. I felt my mouth smile, not with joy, but with a kind of relief that tastes like chlorine. This is where I should have walked. Out the door, into the hot afternoon, let the sun bleach me. Instead, I held my ground, because sometimes survival is just refusing to give up your square of carpet. Dad's jaw flexed. This is a smear. Brennan read. Probability of paternity, 0%. The word hung there, neat as a headstone. 0. The air in the lawyer's office was too cold, too still, like the kind of quiet before someone drops a bomb. Oak paneling. Old books that smelled of dust and regret. My grandfather's face in a framed photo on the wall, watching like he already knew this was about to get messy. Dad sat to my left, arms crossed, jaw tight. He hadn't looked at me once since we walked in. I caught my reflection in the polished table, same brown eyes, same hairline. But apparently, not enough resemblance for him. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Carter left his estate to be divided between his son, Daniel Carter, he nodded toward Dad, and his grandson, Adam Carter. My name sounded heavy in that room. It was the first time I'd felt seen since Grandpa died. Then Dad leaned forward, voice flat but cutting. Before we talk numbers, I want a DNA test. I laughed. Couldn't help it. You're joking. His eyes didn't flinch. You don't look like my son. The room shrank. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, pen tapping against his legal pad. Outside, I swear I could hear traffic stop. This is where I should have walked out, I tell you. But I didn't. I wanted to see how deep he'd dig the hole. Is this about the money? I asked. Or are you just trying to erase me in front of a stranger with a law degree? Dad's lips twitched, half sneer, half smile. It's about the truth. Your mother wasn't exactly reliable. Oh, there it was. Not just an attack on me. A drive-by on Mom, too. She'd been dead 10 years, and he was still throwing shade. The lawyer coughed into his hand. Mr. Carter, such a request would delay the execution of the will. I don't care, Dad said. If he's not mine, he's not entitled to a dime. And right there, I realized something ugly. This wasn't about inheritance. This was about him getting the last word in a fight my parents had decades ago. I looked him dead in the eye. Fine, let's test. But when it comes back the way you don't want, you're going to look real stupid. That's when his smirk dropped. For just a second, I saw fear flicker behind his eyes. 2 days after the funeral, I found it. Not in some safe deposit box or lawyer's vault. Nope, Bottom drawer of Grandpa's desk, under a stack of old tax returns and a tin of pipe tobacco so stale it could have been used for drywall filler. A manila envelope. My name scrawled across the front in his handwriting. Thick, like it held more than paper. I should have called the lawyer. I should have left it sealed, handed it over like evidence. But you already know I didn't. Inside, two things. First, a notarized letter, dated 6 months ago. The ink was still bold, like Grandpa had wanted it to last. It read, Adam, if you're reading this, Daniel said something stupid. He's been saying stupid things since he was 9, so odds were high. This is your proof. And then, a lab report. Not from some shady internet clinic, but from a reputable testing facility 2 towns over. My DNA. Grandpa's DNA. A perfect paternal line match. I sat there, the paper warm from my hands, my pulse loud in my ears. Proof. But that wasn't the real bomb. Folded inside the lab report was a Polaroid, faded, edges curling. My dad, maybe 20, grinning with an arm slung around a man I'd never seen before. Same square jaw, same eyes. The resemblance was a punch in the face. On the back, in Grandpa's blocky handwriting, Daniel's real father. I read it twice, then laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was like the universe had handed me the script to a play Dad didn't know he was in. This was bigger than the will. Bigger than me proving I was Grandpa's grandson. This meant Dad wasn't even Grandpa's son. And suddenly, I understood that look of fear in the lawyer's office. Maybe he'd always known. Or maybe, deep down, he'd suspected, and that was worse. The front door slammed. Heavy footsteps. Dad's voice, sharp. We need to talk. I slipped the envelope under the desk blotter just as he appeared in the doorway. You find anything in here? His eyes scanned the desk like a TSA agent with a grudge. Just dust and bad furniture, I said. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Good, because I'm not letting you or Brennan pull some stunt with forged documents. I looked at him, really looked. The man who'd spent my entire life measuring me against himself was about to learn he'd been using the wrong ruler. This is where I should have told him everything, I tell you. But where's the fun in that? Instead, I leaned back, smiled, and said, You might want to be careful with those accusations, Dad. Sometimes DNA tests tell you more than you want to know. His jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Guess we'll find out, I said, and let the silence do the rest. By Monday, the first crack had formed. It wasn't in the will, wasn't in the paperwork. It was in him. We were sitting in Brennan's office again, the will still on pause like a bad movie. Dad was slouched in his chair, one leg bouncing, pretending not to notice how the lawyer kept looking at him instead of me. Brennan slid a folder across the desk. Per your request, Mr. Carter, we've arranged for the official test. You'll both be swabbed today. Dad nodded, but it was too quick, like a man saying yes before reading the contract. You'll get your truth, I said, but so will I. His head jerked toward me. And what's that supposed to mean? I leaned forward. Maybe you're not the only one who's been lied to. That got him. Just a flicker, a microsecond of something like panic before he hid it behind a smirk. Nice try. Here's the thing. You can't smirk with your whole body. His shoulders were tight, his breathing shallow. He was already playing defense and didn't know the game yet. The nurse came in with the swabs. Clean gloves. Small talk about the weather. I watched Dad's hands. They weren't steady. She swabbed me first, quick and painless. Then him. He barely opened his mouth, like he was afraid the swab might scrape a secret loose. When she left, Brennan sealed the samples in an envelope. Chain of custody intact, he said. Results in about a week. Dad stood, already reaching for the door. Good. Then this can all be over. That's one possibility, I said. He stopped halfway out. You think you're clever. No, I said. I think Grandpa was clever. You're just late to the party. That night, I pulled out the manila envelope from Grandpa's desk again. Read the letter twice more. Stared at the Polaroid until my eyes burned. It wasn't just leverage. It was an answer to every time he'd called me a liar, every sideways glance at family dinners, every little dig about how I took after my mother. And now? Now it was a loaded gun sitting in my desk drawer. The question was when to pull the trigger. The results came on a Wednesday. Brennan called me first, voice low, like the walls had ears. They're in. I'd like you both here at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Enough time for the anticipation to ferment into something sharp. I spent the morning pacing my apartment, running through every possible version of Dad's reaction. Shock, anger, denial, maybe even relief. When I got to the office, he was already there. Same seat as before, same crossed arms, same look that said, let's get this over with. Brennan didn't waste time. Opened the envelope, pulled out the report. Results show a 99.9% probability that Adam Carter is the biological son of Daniel Carter. I leaned back, let the words hang, watched his face for any crack. Nothing. Too still. But Brennan wasn't finished. He reached for another envelope. And, per Mr. Carter Sr.'s request before his passing, we also tested Daniel Carter against himself in relation to the decedent, Mr. Robert Carter. Dad frowned. What? Brennan's voice stayed calm. Results show 0% probability of paternity. There it was. A silence so heavy it bent the air. Dad's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to me like I'd orchestrated the whole thing. You, he started. Me? I cut in. No, Dad. This one's all you. Or rather, not you. He stood, gripping the edge of the table. This is a scam. He forged. Chain of custody, Brennan interrupted, his tone like steel wrapped in velvet. Documented from start to finish. I didn't look away from him. Guess that makes you the one who doesn't look like his father. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. You think this changes anything? Everything, I said. It changes everything. Family gossip moves faster than Wi-Fi. By Friday morning, half my relatives knew, and the other half were pretending they didn't. It started with Aunt Lila. She called me at 8:17 a.m. Yes, I remember the time, because her opening line was, I always knew something was off about your father. She said it like she'd been saving it for years. By noon, my cousin Mara had texted me a blurry screenshot of a family group chat where the news was ricocheting between shocked emojis and people asking if Brennan could really do that kind of test without permission. He could. Grandpa had given permission, and that was enough. At 3 p.m., Dad called. No hello. Just, you're going to regret this. I almost laughed. Regret what? Finding out who my family is. You've humiliated me. Dad, I didn't humiliate you. DNA did. Silence. Then, quieter. This is between us. It doesn't need to go any further. I let that sit. It's already gone further. And honestly, I didn't send a single text. The truth was, I didn't have to. Grandpa had built this reveal like a bomb. Wind it up, drop it in the middle of the while reading, watch it explode in every direction. When I hung up, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Text message. We need to meet. There are things you don't know. M. Only one person in the family signed texts with a single letter, Mara. I typed back. When and where? Her reply came instantly. Tonight. Grandpa's cabin. The cabin. The place Dad hated going because it was too far from cell service. The place Grandpa went when he wanted to think or hide. If she was summoning me there, it meant she had something she didn't trust to say anywhere else. And if it was about Dad, well, let's just say I had my recorder charged before I left. By the time I reached the cabin, the sun had collapsed behind the pines, leaving the whole place soaked in that deep blue shadow that makes you check twice for movement. The gravel crunched under my tires, loud in the stillness. Grandpa's place looked exactly the same as it had since I was a kid, with siding faded to silver, the porch light flickering like it was tired of its own job. Mara's car was already there, a little hatchback with a crack in the taillight she'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. She was sitting on the steps, hoodie pulled up, looking like someone about to sell me black market information. You came alone? She asked, standing as I climbed out. Yeah. What's this about? She didn't answer, just turned and unlocked the cabin door. Inside smelled like cedar, coffee grounds, and the faint trace of Grandpa's aftershave. She flicked on the lamp by the couch, and for a moment, it was like he'd just stepped out to chop wood. Sit, she said, which was funny because Mara's not the bossy type. I sat. She pulled a battered shoebox from her tote bag and set it on the coffee table between us. What's this? I asked. Stuff Grandpa gave me a month before he died. Told me to hold on to it until, well, she gestured vaguely. Until this happened. She popped the lid, and my stomach went tight. On top, there were photographs, dozens of them, Most of people I didn't know. But a few I recognized instantly. Dad, in his 20s again, same as the Polaroid I'd found. Arm around that same stranger with the square jaw. In some shots, they were laughing over beers. In others, they were working on what looked like an old motorcycle, sleeves rolled up, grinning like brothers. Except, on the back of one photo, in Grandpa's handwriting. Not his brother. Not my son. Beneath the photos were envelopes, each labeled in that same blocky script. Hospital records. Correspondence. Statements. I reached for the hospital envelope. Inside, a birth certificate for Daniel Carter. Place of birth, St. Mary's Hospital. Father's name, blank. I felt the air leave my lungs. He knew, I said. All this time, he knew Dad wasn't. Mara cut me off. It's worse. Look at the letters. The correspondence envelope was full of neatly folded pages, all from the same woman. At first, I thought maybe they were love letters to Grandpa. Then I read the first line. Robert, I know you didn't want to hear from me again after what happened with Clara. Clara, my grandmother. But Daniel deserves to know who his father is. He's been asking questions I can't answer, and it's not fair to keep pretending. You said it was better for him to believe he was yours, but how long do you think you can keep that lie? My hands shook as I read. The rest of the letter made it clear Dad's biological father was this other man in the photos, someone Grandpa had apparently despised enough to erase from the family entirely. Why would he keep this? I asked. Mara leaned forward. Because he knew one day, Daniel would try to erase someone else. And when that day came, he wanted you to have the ammunition. It landed like a punch. The DNA test wasn't just to prove I was his grandson. It was to detonate the lie Dad had built his whole life on. Mara pushed the shoebox toward me. It's yours now. He wanted you to finish what he started. Outside, a branch cracked, sharp enough to make us both freeze. Mara moved to the window, peeked through the curtain, then jerked back. It's him, she whispered. Dad. I stood, stuffing the letters back into the box. My pulse was loud in my ears. He followed me. The knock on the door came hard. 3 times, no pause. Adam, Dad's voice called. Open the door. Mara looked at me. What are you going to do? And here's the thing. Every instinct told me to hide the box, to protect it. But another voice, Grandpa's voice, said, let him see. Let him know you hold the match. I walked to the door, slid the bolt, and pulled it open. He stood there in the porch light, face pale, eyes locked on the box in my hands. What's that? I didn't answer. Just stepped aside. Come in, Dad. We've got family history to talk about. He hesitated, then crossed the threshold. This is where I should have been scared. But instead, I felt the opposite, calm, steady. For the first time in my life, I had something he couldn't take back. Dad stayed standing, his shadow stretching across the old rug like it belonged here more than he did. Mara sat stiff on the couch, her hoodie pulled tight, eyes flicking between us like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. You've been going through my father's things, he said, voice low but loaded. I set the shoebox on the coffee table and slid the lid off, slow enough for him to see the edge of the Polaroid sticking out. Not just his things, his plans. His eyes darted to the photo. Recognition hit fast. First the flicker of surprise, then the hard mask. That means nothing. I plucked the Polaroid free, turned it so the porch light caught both faces in it. His and the man with the same jawline, the same grin. Looks like something to me. I told you people can fake. I cut him off. Handwriting? Hospital records? Letters from the woman who raised you? I pulled the birth certificate out next, laying it flat on the table between us. Father's name, blank. You want to explain that? His jaw twitched. Those are lies she told to hurt him. My mother was covering for you, I said. And Grandpa went along with it, for your sake. But you? You spent my whole life looking at me like I didn't belong. He took a step toward the table. You don't know what you're talking about. I didn't move. I know enough. I know why you hate this cabin. Why you never brought me here. Too many ghosts. Too much truth. Mara's voice cut in, soft but sharp. He knew you'd come after Adam. That's why he gave me this box. Dad's eye snapped to her. And you decided to play spy? She didn't blink. No. I decided to keep my promise to him. He looked between us, and for the first time, I saw it. Real fear. Not of me, but of the walls closing in. You think this changes the will? He asked. I shook my head. The will's just paper. This changes you. Every time you open your mouth to tell me I'm not your son, you're telling the world you're not his. His breathing was uneven now. If this gets out. Oh, it will, I said. You can either accept it quietly, or we can let the whole family hear the details straight from Grandpa's handwriting. He stared at me, and I could see the math in his head, damage control versus pride. This is where you walk away, I told him. Not me. You. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he stepped back, eyes locked on the box like it might bite him. You don't know the whole story, he muttered. Then sit down, I said, and tell it. He didn't sit at first, just stood there, shoulders squared like a man on trial who still thought he could win. Then, without a word, he lowered himself into Grandpa's old armchair, the one with the frayed armrest and the coffee stain shaped like Florida. Mara stayed on the couch, arms folded. I took the other chair, the shoebox still open on the table between us like a silent referee. He stared at the Polaroid, not meeting my eyes. I was 20 when I found out, he said finally. Found out what? I kept my voice flat. That Robert wasn't my real father. He let the words hang like he expected them to echo. My mother, she'd been seeing someone before they got married. A mechanic. Name was Alan Graves. The name meant nothing to me, but it clearly burned his tongue to say it. They split up before she met Robert. She was already pregnant when they got married, but she never told him. He figured it out anyway. Said he didn't care. Said I was his son from that day forward. I almost laughed. So he accepted you, loved you, and you still had to grow up hearing whispers, seeing the looks. You think kids don't notice when they're different? When their father's hair is black and theirs is light? When they have some stranger's smile? Mara shifted. So you spent your life hating that man? He finally looked at me. No, I spent my life trying to be him. And failing. He had this way. Like the rules didn't apply to him, but he made everyone else better by breaking them. People loved him. They never loved me like that. I let the silence stretch. So when I came along, you were hers, he said, meaning my mother. And she'd already hurt me in ways you'll never understand. Every time I looked at you, I saw her. And I told myself, maybe you weren't mine. Maybe that would explain why I couldn't. He stopped himself. Couldn't what? I asked, leaning forward. Couldn't love you the same way. His voice cracked just enough for me to notice. It was easier to doubt you than to admit I was the problem. The words landed heavy. For a second, I almost forgot to be angry. Almost. So you tried to erase me from his will, I said, to make the story match your feelings. He didn't deny it. I thought if I could prove you weren't blood, it would justify it. Make it clean. Mara's voice was sharp now. But you are blood, and you still lose. He turned to her, eyes narrowing. You think you're the hero here? You've just made it impossible for me to show my face to this family again. I stood, picking up the shoebox. Then don't, I said. Because from now on, your place in this family isn't something you get to define. He stayed seated as I walked to the door, Mara following. Just before I stepped outside, I glanced back. He was staring at the Polaroid again, and for the first time, he looked small in that chair. The will reading reconvened 2 weeks later. Brennan's office was full. Aunt Lila, Mara, a couple of cousins who'd shown up just for the theater. Dad sat at the far end of the table, staring at nothing, wearing the same suit from the funeral. It hung on him differently now, like even the fabric knew the fight was over. Brennan cleared his throat. We can finally proceed. He read through the first section, small bequests, personal items to different relatives. Then he got to the heart of it. To my grandson, Adam Carter, I leave the cabin, the lakefront property, and all personal effects contained therein. The shoebox was sitting in my apartment now, top shelf of my closet, but I felt its weight just hearing that line. To my son, Daniel Carter, Brennan continued. I leave my collection of tools, the 1969 Mustang in the barn, and the following letter. He unfolded a single page, glanced at Dad, and began to read. Daniel, you spent too long trying to prove you were mine instead of being a man in your own right. I forgave your mother. I forgave you. But I won't forgive what you tried to do to Adam. If you can't be proud of the blood in your veins, at least try to be proud of the work you put into the world. The tools and the Mustang are worth money, but more than that, they're worth the sweat it takes to make them shine. Robert, The room was quiet except for the hum of the old desk lamp. Dad didn't look up. Brennan set the letter down and turned another page. There is one more clause. Everyone leaned in. In the event of disputes over lineage, the executor is instructed to make public any and all records the decedent left regarding paternity, including Daniel Carter's. My eyes went to Dad. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. The whole room knew now. The whispers wouldn't be whispers anymore. Brennan closed the folder. That concludes the reading. People stood, chairs scraping the floor. Some went straight for me. Handshakes, pats on the back, those awkward murmurs people give when they're not sure if you've won or just survived. Dad stayed seated until the room emptied. When it was just us, he finally looked at me. You got what you wanted. I shook my head. No, I got what he wanted. He stared at me for a long moment, like there was something else he wanted to say but didn't have the words or the right anymore. Then he stood, walked out without another word. I stayed behind, my fingers resting on the grain of Brennan's conference table. Grandpa hadn't just left me property. He'd left me the truth, ugly and heavy and unshakable. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged in this family, not because of the DNA, but because someone had fought for me to keep my place. When I left the office, the air outside was cold, sharp, the kind that makes you stand a little straighter. This is where I should have felt empty. But instead, I felt free.